Everyone. Thank you so much for being here live with us tonight. My name is Michaela Tracy. I'm the Education Manager at Voices for CASA Children. We're a nonprofit that supports CASA volunteers in Maricopa County. And for those of you who may not be familiar, a CASA or Court Appointed Special Advocate is a volunteer from the community who's trained and appointed by a judge to represent the best interests of a child or children living in foster care. At Voices, we surround volunteers with support and continued education so that they can show up as an effective advocate. And one of our goals this year at Voices is to start opening up our part of our educational opportunities to the public. So we're committed to equipping our broader communities to better understand and support these youth. I believe and we believe that looking out for the children in our community is something all of us are a part of. So, with that in mind, I'm excited to introduce you all today to our guest speaker tonight, Gaelin Elmore. Gaelin is a speaker, trainer, and consultant whose work centers on belonging, identity, and the lived experience of young people in foster care. He spent more than a decade in the system himself before being adopted in high school by his football coach, and he went on to play college and professional football. So today he travels the country training human service professionals, educators, and communities on what he calls the belonging difference. And many of you may also remember him as the guest on our most popular episode on the By Their Side podcast, which I would highly recommend you all take a listen if you haven't yet. And I'll put links in the follow-up. All right, Gaelin, we're thrilled to have you back with us. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you now. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Michaela. Can you hear me good? Are we good? Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks, Michaela, and thanks, Voices for Casa Children, and for all of you for spending your evening with us. So, I am excited to tell you a little bit about my story, experience, perspective, talk to you about the power of belonging, how it can be the difference for the vulnerable young people navigating care. And I know that this is open to the community, so you have people all across your specific local community, but there is a chance that we have people from different parts of the country here on this call as well. So excited to talk a little bit about this, and we'll save some time at the end for some questions. So I hope you stay engaged and know that I am an open book. So I would love to answer any questions that you have at the end. I am going to share my slides here. And yeah, so the conversation we're having today is about the belonging difference, and we'll get into what that actually means. I want to share with this visual. I'm going to start here because ultimately this idea of belonging, the idea of casa to begin with, is an idea that is built around helping people become successful, helping people climb the mountain, helping people become the version of themselves that they were always supposed to be. And this is the purpose of us being on this call tonight. How can each and every one of us in our own unique way contribute to other people becoming quote unquote successful? Now, the reason I start here is because success can vary. And I think oftentimes when we think of success, especially when we're talking about foster youth, when we're talking about foster care, there are some specific buckets that we identify as success. Success can be adoption. Success can be reunification. Success can be graduation, right? These other things are community or relationship focused. They're guardianship. It's kind of having some closure to a traumatic situation with a young person navigating not having a family, not having a home, etc. Those things are success milestones, if you will. We also have the material ones. We have graduation. We have getting a job. We have getting into college. We have all of these things that are indicators of what success is supposed to be. And fortunate or unfortunate for me, however you want to look at it, I believed in some of those milestones or those markers or those what we're going to refer to tonight as a mountaintop moment. And those moments were really hard to navigate, not because they weren't cool, not because I didn't experience really cool or productive, life-giving things, but because it just complicated my situation. And what I mean by that is I experienced a lot of my childhood in the foster care system, and there were many things directly and indirectly communicated to me that I would set my hopes on changing my life forever. And some of those things were early on, it was reunification with my family. Early on, being a kid navigating care, that was potentially being adopted. Those are things that were like, okay, when that's not available for me, whether because I chose for it not to be or because my like situation didn't allow for those things to happen, my sights got set on something different. So very early on, success to me started to become graduating high school. It started to become being an athlete, going to college to play sports, eventually getting an opportunity to play professional sports. And I've I was fortunate enough to actually achieve that. So I was a college recruit to play college football and basketball, and I went to the University of Minnesota. That's where I got my degree from. I went to East Carolina University in North Carolina, did a year of grad school there and then I eventually got a chance to sign an NFL contract with the Cincinnati Bengals. And the day that I got offered that contract, which uh, was it was like it was a dream come true, like it would be for anyone. It felt like one of these cinematic life moments that I would remember forever. And I do, obviously, I'm talking to you about it. It is something I've remembered forever, but not for the reasons that I assumed that would be the case. I was in Florida training and when I got the call from my agent at the time that I had gotten a contract offer, I remember sitting down, and the first thing I wanted to do was to call my biological parents. My biological parents, mother and father, they separated when I was a young boy, and I had never lived with my mom ever again after I was taken from her before my fifth birthday. I, on the other side, did get reunified with my dad when I was 13 years old, actually a little bit before my 13th birthday. And we had experienced life together before I was taken away from him when he got arrested when I was 16. And so there were two different relationships, but immediately the first thing that I wanted to do was to call my biological parents. And that's not a feeling that I had a lot. That's not a thought that came across my mind a lot in my life. When I got my first scholarship offer, when I got my second or whatever. Those milestones didn't become moments where I was like, immediately I want to call my dad. And we'll talk about that in a second. But on this particular day, I did. And I called my mom first, and the phone call was really short. And I remember it being a really jarring conversation, not because my mom said anything that was harmful, not because she said anything that was mean or sometimes people's minds go to worst case scenarios. It was because of none of those things. It was really short because I realized that my mom didn't know that I did this for us. She didn't know, and I could tell, and I didn't know, right? I didn't know, but I had expectations that I did not communicate to anyone because I wasn't able to communicate them to myself. But I did not, my mom did not know that I had done this for us and that I was hoping for this to be the thing that fixed everything in our life. And that conversation not going the way I hoped was difficult. And so I kind of brushed that off. I moved to the next person on the call log, which was my dad, and I called him and the same thing happened. Sorry, I'm in a room. I knew this was going to happen very early in this call. I'm, there we go. Okay, it's going to happen again. So just get comfortable with it. I knew that was going to happen. It actually kind of looked better without the lights. All right. Uh, I called both of my parents, and those calls were not what I wanted them to be. And what I know now is that those are supposed to be these milestone moments. Those are supposed to be these mountaintop moments that were going to let me know that the rest of my life was going to be okay. And it didn't work out that way. I think sometimes in foster care we overblow that we can overcomplicate what success looks like in this space. Not because those things don't matter, not because those things aren't important, but really because those things are beyond our control. The conversation I want to have with you is that belonging is the difference. And the beauty of belonging is that belonging doesn't require adoption. Belonging doesn't require any formalized placement. Belonging doesn't require specific things that I think we often think are required to experience success in this space. Belonging is something that we can experience anywhere. And if we look at my story and my experiences, and I kind of just took you to the end before we got to some of the earlier bits of it. But when you look at my story, my story is, I believe, and through my work, this has been communicated to me. My story is powerful because it didn't require these extremes scenarios. My story is powerful because I was met by some of the more uncommon, or I guess some of the more common support systems that you can imagine. I was I was offered belonging by people that weren't supposed to give it to me. And that's the conversation I want to have with you today. That's what I think you are capable, regardless of what brings you on this call, why you're here, who invited you, who forced you to show up. Uh, Regardless of what brings you here today, I believe that belonging is the answer that our communities need, that the vulnerable within our communities need. And regardless of what it looks like for us to invest on their behalf, it's something that each and every one of us can offer. And so I want to quickly define belonging. So what is it? Belonging can be defined in a lot of ways, but first and foremost, it's important that we understand that it is a unique and subjective experience. That what you need to belong and what I need to belong are not the same thing. That what need to belong and what your significant other might need to belong is not the same thing. What one child needs to belong and the next need to belong are not the same thing. That belonging is unique and subjective. And this doesn't mean it's not tangible. This doesn't mean that it's not scientific. This just acknowledges that we are different people, that what one person might need to feel a part of something is not what someone else might need. And what this requires of us as people that are committed to the belonging difference is that we get to know the people that we are trying to care for, serve, and support. And so this definition starts with belonging being a unique and subjective experience, but then it goes on to give us three foundational components that do not vary person to person, that are ingrained into who we are, into our biology, into everything that we need to be at the best in our lives. So, belonging is a unique and subjective experience that relates to a yearning for connection with others. Every human being has a fundamental yearning for connection with others. And a way that we can summarize this in one word is simply community. Every single human being needs community. Now, it's a unique subjective experience. So how we experience community might vary, but we need it to be at our best. The word yearning is in all caps there because yearning for connection with others is a subconscious need. It is a fundamental human need that is not a preference. It's not a choice. It's not a nice to have. It is an absolute need. Neuroscience has shown us that the same parts of your and our brains that are responsible for communicating hunger and thirst are also responsible for communicating lack of belonging and connection. The same parts of our brain that are identifying that, hey, we don't have all the nutrients we need to show up in a space are also responsible for saying we don't have the relational ones we need to show up in a space. And an interesting thing about this is that we've also seen that the same parts of our brain that process physical pain also processes social pain. The same parts of our body that are triggered, that are firing when we are under physical threat, are also firing when we are under social threat, when we are excluded, when we do not belong somewhere. We all have a fundamental yearning for community with others. The next thing is a need for positive regard. Carl Rogers, a renowned psychologist, says that positive regard is it's a fundamental need for unconditional positive regard in our lives. And the way that this can be summarized is through compassion. We all need to know that there are people who care about us beyond what we do for them. Beyond what we do for them is an important piece because it's acknowledging that it's unconditional, that it's not earned, that it's not a reward, that it's not something that is a transaction. Compassion has to be freely given for belonging to take place. And in this space, as we talk about youth navigating care, what they need from our communities is compassion with no strings. Compassion that doesn't require a specific GPA, compassion that doesn't require a squeaky clean criminal record, if they have that, right? Compassion that doesn't require that you check all the boxes that I need from you in order for me to do something on your behalf. By definition, compassion is to suffer with someone. So that some of the call to action here for us on this call in this room right now is how can we be a part of the belonging difference by inconveniencing ourselves for someone else? It's not going to come with no cost. Sometimes I feel like people are looking for ways to invest, to give back, and never have to get their hands a little dirty. And that can't happen with belonging. Now, I'm not saying that it has to be the most unbearable thing that you've ever gone through, that it has to be the most suffering that you've ever imagined. No, it's going to vary person to person. However, there is an expectation, if we're going to be about supporting people in this way, that we are inconveniencing ourselves for other people. What does that look like? It looks like your time. It looks like you continually trying to teach someone that may not be willing to receive the lessons you're offering. It is showing up and having someone flake on you and then rescheduling and choosing to show up again. It is unconditional compassion. Now, compassion is something you probably know in your life. It's something you live by. I don't know if you would be on this call if you weren't a compassionate person, but I do know we have a tendency to be compassionate toward the people we like the most. And that's where the conditions start to come in, right? We are compassionate to the neighbor that we enjoy the most. We're compassionate to the coworker that we enjoy working with the most. I don't believe our compassion for other people is not measured by how compassionate we are to our favorite people. I believe our compassion is measured by how compassionate we are to our least favorite people or the people who have not earned what we're offering. And that's what we're talking about when it comes to belonging. Third is a desire for personal connection. Every single human being has a fundamental desire to be connected to other people on a deep and intimate level, to be in a relationship where they are known for the full version of them, not just the clean version of them, not just the prepared version of them. This is essential to who we are. It's the people who know the real us that help make sense of the ups and downs in life. They're the ones that when we do hit a rock bottom, that hold our hand and keep moving forward. These three things are, I don't think they're new ideas for you. I don't think they're foreign ideas to you. I imagine if you're on this call, it's because you've experienced things like this at one point in your life. But I need us to understand that these things don't come organically or naturally to a space like foster care. These aren't things that just are readily available everywhere you look. And even if it is, we're talking about a population of people who have been hurt enough that they don't know how to decipher. And I'm saying they as in me also don't know how to decipher between a hand that is hurting and a hand that is helping. And so I reject both. That's where the unconditioned comes in. That's where the community comes in. And that's why we need to invest to get to know people on an intimate level. Now, if we had to oversimplify, in 3 words, we summarize that in 3 words or three key points. If we had to continue our simplification of belonging, it's safety and connection working together. It's both of these things, safety and connection working together. Now, safety without connection is isolation. Safety without connection is isolation. I imagine that there are ways because we know that our society is the most isolated, disconnected, and disengaged that it's ever been, that there are ways in your personal, professional, and whatever personal, professional, what other P you want to add, life where you have at times felt isolated. And I don't think any of us believe that isolation is a productive, positive solution to anything difficult that we're going through. If anything, there's research that shows us isolation is 6 times more harmful than alcohol on the human body. There's research that shows us that loneliness on multiple levels is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so when we are putting people in quote unquote physically safe spaces without connection, it's not enough. It's not enough. I think there are many ways in which my life was profoundly complicated because of physical safety through excuses of physical safety. And we'll talk about that in a second. Connection without safety is an unhealthy, abusive relationship. No one in here would advocate for someone that they care about to be connected with people who don't care about their well-being. Belonging is both of these things happening together. So this idea of being successful, of what does success look like in this space, is one that I've wrestled with for a long time because they're outside looking in. People assume that I was a success story. And what those expectations often did for me was lead me to be disappointed, lead me to be heartbroken, lead me to be discouraged because these success things are all often rooted in achievements and not rooted in this deeper fundamental human need to belong somewhere. You can be, like I found out, you can be a professional athlete and not belong anywhere, and that still has a impact on you. You could be a successful business person and not belong anywhere, and that still have an impact on you. You could be an adoptee and have this legal title and still not belong anywhere. So these things are a part of the solution, but they're not the solution. They're a part of good and they can be good, but they're not everything. And so I don't want you to believe that your job or your expectation coming into this space is to guarantee success, to guarantee these milestones for young people. We do know that there are positive outcomes, that there is really, really good data that lets us know that certain things lead to better outcomes, but it's not your job to guarantee those things. The conversation I want to have with you is it's your job to give them the chance. You see, my life was not transformed by people who saved me or rescued me from the bad things that happened in my life. My life was transformed by people who simply just gave me a chance to navigate it better. There's his name is Dr. Greg Walton. He is a psychologist out of Stanford. And I just love he does so much work around belonging. And he said that the goal of belonging is not to remove or prevent the bad thing from happening. The goal of belonging is to help the person separate the bad thing from their identity. And that is what belonging can do. When you experience belonging while you're in some of your difficult times and most complicated circumstances, belonging helps you realize that it's not because you are bad. So many young people navigating care go through care believing that they are unworthy of connection, that they're unworthy of community, that they're unworthy of love, belonging. And those things are beliefs that can thrive, not just because of the bad things, but because of what the bad things communicate about them. Because the bad things continually happening is evidence for that person going through something hard that it will never change. And it will never change for me because I'm less than others. The goal for young people is not to the worst case scenario for young people, and here we go again. This, hello, there. I'm in a hotel, so forgive me. I'm a very unserious person too, so if you see me waving my hands and laugh, that's totally fair. Um, and I also know this is being recorded, so this is going to be awesome for other people to see later. The goal, the worst case scenario of a young person navigating care is that they walk out believing that those things are evidence that their life will never be better. That the bad things that have happened to me in my childhood would change the trajectory of the rest of my life. And belonging is something that gives us different evidence. Belonging is something that gives us something else to believe in. And belonging is the thing that changed my life. I'm not here. I'm not the person that I am without the chances that I've received from people who did not have to give it to me. And I want to tell you about some of those people, but I want us to really, really consider and understand. Um, oh, thank you, Sonny. You're being kind. I was just checking your comments. Uh, we might just let them go out and see what happens. So, in order to be people or to be a place where people belong, and be a place is not, it's not a home, it's not a specific quote unquote place. It is to be a place, to be a person, to be an environment where people can belong. We must be a people who care. And care is not this oversimplification of what you can do for other people. CARE is an acronym that I share often about 4 ways that we can all show up better today, tonight, tomorrow, not in the future, not when we have enough education or training, but 4 things we can just commit to that will help hold us accountable as we get a chance to support people, as we get a chance to be a place where they can belong. And I want to share those 4 things with you through some examples of people being that for me. So the C in the CARE acronym, we already talked about it, is compassion. Compassion means to suffer with. And ultimately, it's hard for anyone to experience belonging without someone caring for them through compassion. We we live in a world that is very pro empathy. Empathy is feeling bad for what someone else is going. Sympathy is also feeling bad. Empathy is being with someone potentially, sitting in discomfort with someone, but it never really requires that we do anything to change it. We just kind of be with them. Compassion requires action, and compassion is what changes lives. Empathy does not change lives or perspectives or support. Empathy is necessary, but it's not everything. Compassion moves the needle. It was compassionate people in my life that did something that made the belonging difference, that um, gave me evidence to believe that all, or to believe that the lies that I used to believe no longer hold weight. And it was yeah, the compassionate people that I think back and I remember now, and I can just see how profound their action was for my betterment. The A in the CARE acronym is authenticity. Authenticity is the proven fact that something is legitimate or real. Another definition says authenticity is to be actually and exactly what you claim to be. And there are a lot of people who claim to be more than what they're ever willing to deliver on. There's a lot of people who um, overpromise and underdeliver and say that they would do something if the circumstances were right. And ultimately, we just have to be authentic with ourselves about what we can and cannot do. Young people don't need you to be everything. They don't need you to be their everything. They just need you to be something. Something in whatever unique way that you can be something. And if everyone on this call and everyone that we knew in our communities chose to be authentic about what they could and could not do for the service of other people, everyone would be a lot better off. Authentic people, the people who didn't didn't have the titles, they didn't have the authority, they didn't have the responsibility to care for me in the ways that they did, but they were willing in the moment to be authentic about with themselves about what they could do. There were people who said, you know what, this isn't my job, but I can do a little bit more than what's being asked right now. You know what, it would be, I would be lying to myself if I said I couldn't do something about this situation. We need more authentic people in our community if we are going to transform, if we're going to support, if we're going to uplift the vulnerable in our community. The R in the CARE acronym is resilience. Resilience is a word we love to apply to young people, that we love to slap that label on young kids in care, but never not never, that's an exaggeration. Rarely are we willing to be resilient in the ways that we expect them to be. And what I mean by this is I was told I was resilient my whole life, and I believed people. And then when I got to the quote unquote mountaintop and the NFL did not save me, the achievement, the title, the trophy did not save me from the trauma. My resilience didn't have as much power. I realized like there was a limit to how resilient I was willing to be. The reason I was able to and have been able to navigate my experiences in the way that I have and am currently is because I've had support that is more resilient than me. And resilience was never supposed to be about one person's ability, willingness to overcome circumstance on their own. It should have been about, and has in successful ways been, resilience has been about systems. It's been about support. It's been about safety nets. We need to be resilient safety nets for people. Oftentimes, the young people navigating care, they're in there because their safety net was not resilient enough to keep them from being there. And that is the responsibility of our communities. I I hope everyone on this call, if something happened in their life, that they would have people that were holding the net for them. There's a metaphor by a psychologist that said belonging is a safety net that catches us when life knocks us off our feet. And I love that quote because the more people holding the net, the stronger it is. And the more nets that are available, the more secure we are. I hope that if life knocked you off your feet, that it wasn't only one net that was standing between you and worst case scenario, that it wasn't just one net that is holding or standing between you and rock bottom. And ultimately, that's what the experience for kids in care have been. It's been this lack of a resilient net that can hold them. And so thus the ways in which we failed them, we now expect them to fill the gap, to fill the gap for themselves. And when we uplift, prioritize, and I would even say when we covet resilience in vulnerable populations, we are setting them up for disappointment. Because I don't care who you are, there will be a situation where you're not so tough, that you're not so resilient and determined. There will come a time where your resilience won't be enough. And that was a reckoning, that was a hard realization for me. The E is empowerment. Empowerment is empowering the young people in care, but empowerment is also empowering the people that may not be on this call. It's empowering your coworkers, it's empowering your team, your community, your neighborhood, your church, whatever thing you're connected to is empowering other people to join in, empowering other people to be caring, empowering other people to be nets, empowering other people to live out a life that is willing to inconvenience itself for other people. Empowerment is extremely important because we can be compassionate, authentic, and resilient, but if we're not preparing people, if we're not equipping people to show up in the ways that maybe we are, then our service, our investment, our work, our care ends with us. And ends with us might mean when we are no longer here. Ends with us might mean when you change jobs. Ends with us might mean when you stop volunteering. Ends with you is can be a lot of different ways. But if we're not empowering people, then we're not giving them the ability to go on, to continue. I like to say if we're not empowering people to be a part of the solution, then we are allowing them to be a part of the problem. And so compassion, authenticity, resilience, and empowerment are the ways that I believe we all can show up better, that we all can be the belonging difference and transform the lives of other people. I want to share with you, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a second. We're gonna have to wave here just to be preemptive and reset the timer. Um, I want to share with you quick two stories, and then let me I'll put my slides up because I want to share my contact information just in case you get it, and then we'll transition into some Q&A time. Um, Here's my information, but I want to share with you two stories of two drastically different people in my journey, two drastically different supporters that totally different roles, but still successful in their own rights. And yeah, I just want to share these with you. Hopefully, you feel encouraged by them. Hopefully, you feel challenged by them. And yeah, I'm going to share. Yeah, the first one is Unlikely Hero. There's something else wanted to share. I shared one metaphor about belonging, being a safety net that catches us. There's another metaphor that I feel like I should share that said belonging is a seatbelt that we wear in life car crashes. And it's a visceral image, but I know everyone on this call has experienced a life car crash where things outside of your control change the course of your life. And what seatbelts do is seatbelts don't protect or prevent harm from happening. They don't prevent the car crash from happening. Seatbelts minimize the damage. Seatbelts give you a chance to keep moving forward. Seatbelts give you an opportunity to go through those difficult things. And there's no one person that can be their own seatbelt. You or I in our life, when we experience life car crashes, cannot be our own seatbelt. So I want to share with you two seatbelts from my life journey that gave me a chance. The first seatbelt is, and I will take this down now. Um, the first seatbelt comes by by way of my elementary school. Her name was Miss Peanut. Yes, you heard me correctly. Her name was Miss Peanut. Miss Peanut was my elementary school janitor. And my foster care experience, the bulk of it happened while I was in this elementary school. So I lived in over 20 different homes during my time in the child welfare system, entered as early as 5 months old, and would be actively in traditional foster care until I was just before my 13th birthday, so 12. And there were times I was reunified with my family and sent back, but I stayed in a lot of different homes. I was a runaway multiple times. I was homeless multiple times. But the home that I stayed in the longest was a home that was physically abusive, emotionally abusive to me and every other child in that home. That school, my elementary school, was the only school that I knew while living in my abuser's home. And it is a place that unquestionably saved my life. It was a seatbelt in one of the darkest seasons of my life. And Miss Peanut was one of the best ones there. Miss Peanut was our elementary school janitor. And on my first day of school in first grade, Miss Peanut called me by name to come take a picture with her and a bunch of other kids. And the reason Miss Peanut could call me by name on my first day of school is because Miss Peanut, having worked at the school for a very long time, and living on the same block, 4 houses down from my abuser, knew who my abuser was. And because she was a janitor, my abuser didn't care about her opinion, didn't care about what she thought, didn't care about what she may or may not do. Miss Peanut got the real performance of from my abuser, not the fake, not the mask, not the oh, I'm a loving caregiver kind of a performance. She got the real thing. And so Miss Peanut went out of her way to learn the name and the face of every child who entered into our home that was coming to our school before we got there. And she would make a beeline to build a relationship with us. And on my first day of school, that's when Miss Peanut started to build one with me. And we would get close. We would build a friendship that was really, really special. And Miss Peanut would um, Miss Peanut would find me in very peculiar situations. I'm going to be honest, I was a kid that entered or was in ISS in school suspension a lot. And Miss Peanut would come in one time and she would give me what she referred to as a better, more effective kind of punishment. Um, and her punishment in her eyes was to make me go around the school and do trash rounds with her. And Miss Peanut successfully convinced the teacher at the time to to let me leave in school suspension and do trash with her. And I would do that. And Miss Peanut, as she would make me do trash with her, would take me to every adult in the building that I had a good relationship with. And she would make me clean their spaces and um, she would make me be held accountable. And so I would get lectures, I would get connection, I would get hugs, but I would also get accountability from people in that school. Miss Peanut would do that a lot. And then Miss Peanut randomly one day decided to give me a lecture instead of taking me around the school. Miss Peanut gave me a lecture and she told me about how I need to do better. I need to be better because I am better. And she gave me a lecture about how my life is more complicated than my friends and that if anything is going to change, then I'm going to need to be the one that changes it. But Miss Peanut could do that because she was an authentic and compassionate person. Miss Peanut went out of her way to get a kid that would have not benefited from sitting in a room with no connection all day. She was compassionate enough to go out of her way, inconvenience herself, and bring me around so that I could get that connection. Not only would she do that one time, she would do it time and time and time again because she was resilient in the support that she was offering. And there are ways in which she challenged me and held me accountable and empowered me to be better because she had built that rapport with me over time. I am thankful for who Miss Peanut is because she didn't let other people tell her the impact that she could make. She didn't let other people tell her that she could or could not be the belonging difference for people, students or young people because she was a janitor. I don't know what life would have looked like if Miss Peanut would have went back and said, you know what, I can't make a difference as a janitor. I need to go become a teacher. And then just disappeared out of my life because she went down this path of more. I don't know what my life would have been like if she said, you know what, Galen, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to become a licensed foster parent, and then you will be in my life and everything will be better. Miss Peanut authentically, with compassion, resiliently empowered me in the ways that she uniquely could. I was doing a training years ago, and someone came up to me and told me about what happened on Miss Peanut's last day of work. And on Miss Peanut's last day of work, our entire district shut down because kids gave her a parade. Miss Peanut got a parade on her last day of work because she was a caring person. And there are people who have dedicated their life to the education and growth and development of students there that will never get that kind of praise or thank you. Not because they didn't make a difference, but because maybe they were trying to make a difference, a bigger difference. They were trying to make a difference that other people told them to make. And I share Miss Peanut as a seatbelt because she is an unlikely supporter. She is someone who, in the humblest of jobs, decided that, you know what, my mission is about impacting lives, and she didn't care how she got there. And so I think that can challenge people on this call to uniquely serve in the ways that you can, in the ways that are uniquely available to you. I don't know what that is. I can't tell you what that is. Only you will know. But I think a lot of people will be better off if more supporters, more seatbelts just stayed in the lane that they're supposed to be in. The next person I want to tell you about is my high school football coach. My high school football coach is a totally different kind of supporter. Um, because he did change his entire life to support me. When I was 16 years old, my dad got arrested and I was going to drop out of high school, which would have been a resilient decision to make. It just wouldn't have been a positive decision to make. Um, it would have been uh, understandable in my perspective decision to make to drop out of high school, but it wouldn't have been a positive one. I am here because my high school coach didn't let me do that. My high school coach found me in the hallway and invited me. I would say it was an invitation. That's a polite way. Demanded that I move in with him. And I looked my coach in the eyes and I was impressed by his invitation, but I told him, no, thank you. And I continued about my business. And on my way, sneaking out of the school later, my high school coach is parked out front waiting for me. And although I didn't want to go, something in me said, give him a chance because he showed up. And I told him not to. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to think about the times in our life where we said we wanted to do something for someone. We said we wanted to help. We said we wanted to be a supporter. And then when time came, because there was a little bit of resistance, because there was a small hurdle or a barrier that got in the way, we didn't deliver on the thing we said we wanted in the first place. And I don't know what would have happened if my coach wasn't there after I told him not to be, but I know I wouldn't be here. And I would get into my coach's car. My life didn't change overnight. It still got hard. Uh, that was the beginning of a really long, arduous journey, but it did get better with time. But the most powerful thing, the greatest act that my coach did as a seatbelt honestly wasn't inviting me to live in his house. It wasn't changing his family's life. It was what he did for my dad. My high school coach would give me driver's ed lessons to the jail, county jail to visit my father. And he would sit with me as I visited him. And during the first visitation, I learned that my dad and my coach were friends and I didn't know that they had built a relationship that I didn't know about. And what I mean by that is when we moved to that town, my coach invited my dad whenever he wanted to have lunch with him because he wanted to learn our story. He wanted to learn about us and he wanted to learn what he could do to build a relationship with us. And he would do that. My dad would show up more than a dozen times over 18 months and they would have lunch together and they would build a friendship. So much so that before I was ever told that my dad was arrested, my coach called my dad in jail. And he called my dad over the phone without question, without even didn't wasn't even asked, just said, Coach, I want you to take my son. And my dad signed over guardianship to my coach over the phone. All because he cared for my dad when we didn't need his help. My coach was empowering us long before he knew what the empowerment would cost him. He was being compassionate in his care long before he knew how much it might inconvenience him because he was being an authentic and resilient person. Sometimes we say we want to help and then we realize how much it's going to cost us to help and then we back off. Sometimes we say we want to be the difference. We want to be a part of change and then we realize change is going to require quite a bit and we find excuses not to be. I'm here because people like my coach chose to invest in a time when they didn't have to and chose to be a seatbelt for a kid that they had no obligation to be one for. And I know that my story is a story, it's a story of luck. It's a story of opportunity and chance. But I believe that all young people in care need is a chance. And maybe that chance means 100 chances. Maybe that chance means three. I don't know. I'm not going to put a number on it, but it's not your job to guarantee that they become successful. It's your job to give them a chance. And only you know what that looks like. I am who I am because of the chances that I got, because of the care that people offered me. And I'm gonna close our time and we'll open it up for questions. But I'm gonna close it with this quote from James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, where he said, "To crave a result, but not the process, is to guarantee disappointment." To crave a result for young people in care to be successful, for them to become the people they were supposed to be, for their lives not to be altered by things they had no control over, to crave that result, but not crave the process of supporting them to get there is to guarantee disappointment. I have benefited from people who have craved the process more than the result. And the time in my life of trying to climb the mountain and failing and realizing it's not what I hoped it would be are the times that I've craved the results, but not the process. everyone needs belonging in order to be their best selves. And although it may not come from the people it was designed to come from, we all have a unique opportunity to offer that to young people navigating care. There's a lot of ways you can do that. CASA is absolutely, unequivocally an amazing place for people to start, whether through education or volunteering or support. Uh, Obviously, we're talking about this because CASA is such a phenomenal space for that. But you need to decide what does that look like for you. So with that being said, I think Michaela's gonna hop back on and we get to answer any questions that you may not have. Again, thank you for being here. Uh, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I don't see any questions in the Q&A, so I'll give you all a moment. Feel free to also type them in the chat. If not, I have my own.
Yeah, got to be
But I've already
prepared.
done a whole podcast episode with you, so I got all my questions. Okay, well then I'm gonna go. Okay, what would you say to a child who is searching for belonging and looking in all the quote unquote wrong places?
Yeah. So good question. I would say to a young person like that's specifically to them that it's impossible to belong anywhere if you don't belong with yourself. And what I mean by that is, I do know that there were some people that wanted and were offering belonging to me, but I was not ready to receive it. I was not at a space where I could understand that that was the kind of belonging that I would benefit from. I had an idea of what that was. And for me, for a long time, well into my adulthood, that was with my biological parents. And it was in those calls that I realized I was like, they can't give me what I want. Like they're not capable of offering the thing that I need. And that was like a wake up call. But I would say anyone, and it's easier said than done, anyone that's wrestling with belonging, I would just say like, do you belong with yourself yet? And I at that point in my life had I was afraid of vulnerability. I was afraid of being seen because being seen meant that if they saw me and then rejected me, that I wouldn't have an excuse as to why they rejected me. Like they would know the real me. There was a lot of risk involved, and so I would say like that journey. It's never too early to start the journey of like belonging with yourself, like really learning the good, the bad, the in between of what makes you you, so that as you show up in spaces, um, you don't you're not changing who you are to for the sake of other people.
Thank you. We do have a few more questions now. Did you, or I'm sorry, let me go to the top here. Why did you say that the decision to drop out of school would have been a resilient decision?
Yeah, I love that question. I'm glad you picked up on that because that was specific phrasing. Resilience is not only a net positive. Resilience is also can be a net negative. Resilience has pros and cons. What we like uplift and idolize in our society is like the positive resilience, but resilience, if not cultivated, like if not developed in a positive way, can be negative. And what I mean by that is if you've ever been if we have CASA on the call, which I see that we do, you've experienced negative resilience from a young person who continues to push you away. Negative resilience is self-sabotage. It's, oh, things are going good. Now I need to, like, that scares me. I need to blow it up. Resilience is this belief that I'm better off on my own. And that's what I believed at 16. My decision to drop out, I genuinely don't believe it was a decision of giving up on my life. It was just giving up on believing that other people would help me get there. And so it would have been a resilient decision. It just wouldn't have been positive. We can't continue to, or it's a disingenuous thing if we only think that that kind of a trait has only a positive outcome, because there are people who are resilient and they have negative experiences all the time, right? Like a resilient person is, oh, I'm going to continue to do this and I don't care if I fail, right? That can be applied to crime. That can be applied to taking advantage of people like that. There's so many ways that resilience shows up in a negative capacity as well. And so I try to make that distinction.
Yeah, that is really important. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
Um, Question, did you ever have a casa? And if not, what would that have meant to you?
Yeah, I didn't have a casa. I didn't. And I can so confidently partner with Casa now because I know that my experience then would have been different if I had one. Because Casa literally exists to be a stand-in, to be a seatbelt in the case of a child. And I didn't have one. I remember feeling very alone, very unheard, very not a part of the process when it came to my own cases and sitting in courts. Um, so yeah, I partner with Casa because I believe every kid in care needs one, and that I also believe my trauma, my abuse wouldn't have lasted for almost 6 years of my life if I had one as well.
Love that. How can you encourage an adult to feel like they belong so that they can build a better relationship with their children?
Hmm. How can you encourage an adult to feel like they belong? Okay, so I there's context I don't have to this. I don't so hmm. We we can't necessarily encourage people to belong. We can just give them opportunities to do so. Um, but as we, Michaela, you asked this question at the start of how can you help a young child or how can you help a child who is struggling with their own belonging, like start to find that, right? And the answer was, well, if you don't belong with yourself, it's going to be hard to belong with other people. And I think the same thing applies to an adult. Um, Trying to find belonging so that they can build those better relationships with their children. Like, I think the same thing applies. It's going to be hard for an adult, a parent, to belong with their children if they don't first belong with themselves. And I think the expectation is really important that it has to be unconditional. So if I'm offering belonging to my child, it's not so that I get belonging back. It's so that I offer them something that they need. Um, So yeah, it's different, but it really comes down to opportunities. Are we giving people chances to experience belonging?
Mm,
Are we giving them a space to experience it? Are we modeling what that looks like? Are they around it enough? I think opportunities are the only thing that we can prioritize that can encourage people to belong. Belonging is something that has to be accepted, right? Like it's an invitation that is can be accepted and rejected without consequence. So
mm.
I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. And it reminds me of something you've told me once before that it requires us to allow someone to bring us in, to show our true
Yeah.
selves so that our true selves can belong. So I think that's part of it is just being in that vulnerable space if you can. Um, I think we are almost at time. Maybe one more question.
Sure.
Um, I want you to look at the one that's in our Q&A and let me
Sure.
know if you want to answer that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll answer that one. That's a great question. So question was, am I in touch with my biological parents? And the answer is yes. My biological mother passed away a year ago,
Mhm.
and that is an entirely different webinar, but we were in contact. In some capacity, I've always had contact with my parents, especially after I was out of my abuser's home. The relationship varied. I would not say I experience belonging with my parents, but I am in relationship with them. And the reason I make that distinction is because my parents are wrestling with their own belonging, and it's hard for them to experience it elsewhere. So, what I do, how I live this out, and this goes back to that earlier question, is I give them opportunities to, but my invitation, the opportunities I'm giving them are not conditional on them doing or receiving it in the way that I want them to. I'm going to continue to offer. So that was what that looked like with my mom. I was in relationship with her, and I continue to try to provide opportunities for doing that. I continue to let her be in the life of my children, or at least get a chance to be. She got to choose what she did with that, and so I gave opportunities, and the same thing is true for my dad right now. Is I give him opportunities to. I try, and there are times where he accepts it, there are times where he rejects it, but that's what, like, when we have signed up to be the belonging difference, what we're signing up to is to hold the net. What we're signing up to is to give people chances, and what we're signing up to is give people unconditional opportunities. And that's what I've tried to live out as well.
I love that. Thank you, Galen. That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
what a beautiful picture. Well, we are at our end, so I just want to thank you all for joining tonight, and thank you, Galen, for sharing your story.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions, are you open to sharing a website or contact that they can reach you at?
Yeah, yeah. So my website is just my first name, last name.com. So GalenElmore.com. And then if you look, the most active social media I'm on LinkedIn. That's more the stuffy professional stuff. I'm on LinkedIn, but also you can find me on Instagram. You'll see more personal life work stuff there. You can always DM me there. If you have questions, I would love to support you in whatever way I can.
Awesome. Thank you. And for those of you who put an email in your sign up, I'll send a follow-up email with information as well. And
Yeah.
I hope you all will join us for our next community training. We will let you know when that is. And again, thank you everyone for joining and have a great rest of your night. Bye,
Thank you
Galen.
all. Bye.
Bye, everyone.